Welcome back, you guys. If you do not like numbers, I seriously recommend that you don't watch this video. Moving to Southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family. Because in today's video, I wanted to not just go over closed properties for 2025 and give that snapshot for 2025. Was it a good year? Was it a bad year? But I realized that for me, numbers are really only significant when I have some sort of comparative analysis to other years. And so I actually wanted to look at several years from 2019 to 2025. I wanted to look at pre-COVID, COVID era, up to 2025 and kind of assess what's going on with South Central Missouri housing market. And perhaps even more spicy, are we looking at some sort of collapse for 2026? What's kind of hilarious is more than any year I've ever noticed, all of the 2026 prediction videos are, you can find something in the entire gamut or spectrum. You can find that we are headed towards doom and gloom, somewhat of a crash type scenario. And you can find other ones that are said that we are set for the biggest boom in the housing market, the biggest return of absolutely exploding sales that we've seen since 2021. So that's what's kind of fun, is that depending on who you listen to, you can find all and everything. And in a way, no one is wrong, because every year you can say that we're going to see a housing market crash, and every year you can say that we're going to see the housing market boom or rebound, and you would be accurate. And that is because, as I've said on so many videos, there are so many niches and then, so many markets and then sub-markets in our nation, even within a state, even within a small regional area, that you can say those things and they're accurate, because that's how much variety we have in the housing market. And as I was looking at these numbers, I was, I gave myself a little pat on the back. If you go back to some of my past videos, my predictions are pretty much accurate. I talked about a rebound that we were going to see from 2023 to 2024 due to low inventory. That was true. What I'm seeing is that I'm not really talking as much about low inventory. I think that is somewhat of a stable analytic that you could say for across the nation, is that we're seeing a lot more inventory. That is not going to be as much one of the deciding factors of this next market. Before we go forward, let's go back. At some point here, I am going to pop up a homemade little chart that I made. Please forgive the Canva graphics. I mean, what is a girl to do? That's all I got in terms of tech and graphic design. But I wanted to show you a visual along with just some points that I want to make of this comparative analysis that we're about to do. Starting 2019, I'm going to be honest, I thought the numbers would be lower. In 2019, we had 13,434 properties that closed in the greater Springfield MLS. So we're looking all the way from Lawrence County, pretty much all the way over to like Carter. Of course, some of the MLSs overlap, and I do want to say that there are going to always be some outliers. So in our MLS, we will have some properties that are right at the Arkansas border, actually on the Arkansas side. And you're also going to have some realtors. They might list a property in our MLS, but it's their friend who's like way outside of our area, closer to Kansas City, and you see these kind of like random properties in our MLS. That's because you can actually list the property and not even be that close to it. So that's why sometimes you see those outliers. For the most part, it's going to be from Lawrence to Carter. Up at the top, you're going to have like Texas, Wright County over to Webster, and then Dallas. So for 2019, 13,434 properties. 2020, I expected to be a way bigger jump because everybody talks about how many properties sold 2020. It was a big jump, but not as big as I was expecting. So in 2020, we had 14,902 properties that closed in our MLS area. The big year was 2021. It will go down in history. And that is the year that kind of set that precedent mentality of just this absolutely outrageous booming market. And I'm not going to get into these other analytics, but that also really is going to be the era that we saw appreciation that would naturally take 5 to 10 years, seriously, happening in a couple years. 2-3 years we were seeing that. That is why that year in particular will go down in history. Lots of sales and insane uptick in appreciation. I want to take a little break and just ask you guys, if you're finding value in this video, if you could subscribe, because so many of you aren't, and also, give it a thumbs up. Any of those positive analytics, it really helps the channel to grow, and it helps me get these videos out to more people. The biggest drop comparatively would be from 2021 to 2022. And that went down from the 15,578, that went down to 13,306 properties. The most dramatic year, 2023, was 11,174 closed properties in this South Central area. That was when you had, sellers and realtors, doing the whole the sky is falling. I mean, there were so many realtors that quit because those sales were down. It's significant, but we're going to talk about that significance in just a minute. Then we saw the beginning of stabilization, I believe, somewhat more of realistic numbers. Okay, so 2024 was 12,222. And we had a little improvement in 2025 at 12,847 properties closed. If you look at my past videos, I did predict this right. I said from 2023, because of low inventory, we were going to see that uptick in 2024. And I also predicted an uptick in 2025, not just because of low inventory, but because we have a significant amount of people still relocating to Southern Missouri. As you look at this graph one more time, what I really want you to appreciate is just that we have a stable, yes, fluctuating, because we did go through like crazy historic events like COVID, but a very stable market in Southern Missouri. I think what we are going to see is we're going to see that stabilized and somewhat, one could say, thriving market pretty much stay consistent. Just like the videos and how you can find people who are talking about the truth of the housing market is that we're going to see all these crashes, and then other people saying the truth of the housing market is that we are about to see the biggest boom phase since 2021. I don't think that either are right, but I also find that in my clientele where I have a lot of people that are waiting for prices to absolutely collapse in Southern Missouri before they move here and buy. And I just want to let people know that I do not see that happening for a long time, for a lot of reasons, and also depending on where you're looking in Southern Missouri. I just had this conversation with another client who's shopping for Lake Close, Lake View. That market, so like let's say you're looking at Table Rock Lake, that market is so consistent. It's always hot. You don't get huge price drops because God only made, so much waterfront property, and actually those lakes are man-made. So the confluence of God and man only was able to create so much of that real estate, right? It's just always going to be incredibly sought after. It's always going to be a hot market there. You're also always going to see a fairly quickly turnover there because they're second homes. It's just not as stable as where people are, primarily their first home, right? So those are kind of those sub niches I talk about and good things to know depending on what you're looking for. Now I'm going to get into my 2026 predictions and why. First of all, I personally think that we're moving into just a more stable, normal market. As we've been fighting for the last few years, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? And we kind of don't know. In a normal market, it's like it's everybody's market. And the truth is, in a normal market, you're gonna have properties that have incredibly motivated sellers. That property is gonna represent a buyer's market. And then you're gonna have someone else that doesn't really need to sell and thinks that, they're holding on to something pretty good, and they're gonna hold out for their price. And so therefore, in their little niche, they're in a seller's market. Both realities are true in a normal market. In a normal market, both the seller and the buyer also have power with negotiation, because really you can find analytics that support either side, and it's always going to come down to an individual property. So on this vein of a normal market, I think that 2026 is going to have an increase in closed properties in South Central Missouri. I think that that is going to have still, the primary factor in that is just going to be migration to the area, because we have two things that are happening. We've got the relocation of baby boomers. A lot of it is conservative people wanting to relocate to red states and finally retire within a conservative or a Christian conservative community. We have a lot of that going on. We also have an incredible amount of first-time home buyers, right? You have like the millennials. Believe it or not, millennials are kind of late to the scene for home buying. And then you've got Generation X together realizing that they want to buy homes. There's going to be a little dip, probably not much, very, very much, not much, a teeny little dip probably in interest rates, but just enough to maybe make people feel psychologically more comfortable. And then also people are just getting used to high rates and kind of realizing like, okay, we're still able to do this. We still want to buy a home. It still is beneficial for the long-term goal of our family, right? We have those two very large groups who in a way have been sitting on the sidelines waiting. And I think that we are going to see a bit of that boom sale from those two groups in 2026. But we are not going to see something dramatic like we saw from 2021 to 2022 to 2023, right? Those like huge, like 2,000, difference in closed properties here. I think that we are going to be mid 13.5, maybe 13.8, something like that for closed homes for 2026. And it might even be more subtle than that. I definitely think it's going to be an uptick. And I don't think it's going to be dramatic like so many videos are saying right now. Now, saying that, there is more that we should discuss. I guess I'm coming out as a real moderate, not politically, but in this conversation, I am coming out as a moderate, because we also need to talk about home prices. Once again, we've just got the complete polar opposites for predictions. We've got that prices are going to plummet and like seriously drop, and that we've got that prices are about to skyrocket. Now, once again, we're gonna see all and everything, because that's always real estate. You can always find, right, the absolute dichotomy. But in this area, what I believe is that we are gonna actually see more of a normal market, which means prices are gonna hold, and we're gonna see more of like natural appreciation that we would see within a year, right? We're not gonna see 5 years of appreciation packed into 1 year. I don't think that we're gonna see that for a while. I don't think that we're gonna lose 5 years of appreciation or gain 5 years of appreciation for a very long time. Now, here's what I do think. The prices that we have, and sellers don't get mad at me, I too, if I was selling my property, would be selling for the market value. But prices are high, okay? And they're high because we went through that condensed appreciation, right? We're like, literally, what would take 5 to 10 years happened in a few years. That's so not normal, and it's not healthy for a market. Now, a lot of people got to benefit from that. Hey, I mean, if I could benefit off of it, I would too, right? We do need to understand that that is where we're still seeing a bit of a rub between like the reality that buyers want to hold and the reality that sellers want to hold. So here, I think that we're going to see, instead of a huge uptick or a huge, crash, we're just going to see prices kind of maintain and have natural appreciation. Saying that, they're really high prices for this area. And some of you are going to come here and be like, these prices are incredible. So is the market going to crash in 2026? I don't think so. Is the market going to rebound and we're going to have a boom phase like 2021? You guys, I just don't think so. I do not think that we have the analytics to prove any of that. What I do think is I think that we are going to have to get comfortable with the new normal, which is going to be a little bit more normal, okay? To me, that is actually good news. I would like to see gradual fluctuations more. Now, if we have a crash, worst case scenario, yes, we all lose equity. I mean, we can all cry over spilt milk. I say for those of you that want to buy investment properties, or if you're a first-time home buyer, then that will be your opportunity to get property at discount, bargain prices. I just do not see it coming anytime soon. There's someone that I really respect, and he also owns a few thousand. He's a crazy investor. I'm not going to plug him right now, but really big investor, and he believes that in around 7 to 10 years, we're going to have a massive correction in the residential housing market. I just don't have all of that foresight analytics. Like, that's really pushing it out for me to be able to make those predictions. But what I would say, and what I have been saying, is that we have several more years of influx of people moving here. With everything that's going on, because we still have this really, what I would say is like the great reorganization of our nation. People who want to live in red states are moving. It is historic, okay? And Christians wanting to be together. It is, I think, happening at a rate that maybe we've never seen before, or it's been a very, very, very long time. I see that happening for the next few years, and that just holds out. These rural markets that otherwise didn't have much going on, it is going to keep them rocking and rolling. Okay, you guys, that is my little wrap-up analytics 2025 and beyond video. I wanted to kind of paint that landscape of South Central real estate market that went all the way from 2019 to 2025, so that we could see, yeah, there was these big fluctuations, but pretty much we just have a stable market. I also want to be excited for 2026. I think it's going to be a great year. I know I'm going to make more money than ever. I'm going to work harder than ever. I'm really excited about it. I do not think that 2026 is a year to be calling crash or be calling boom. All right, you guys, until next time, bye.